The John Denver plane crash. I've been asked by several people about the John Denver plane crash. John Denver was in a Long Easy. A Long Easy, I got my notes here, is a plane that was built by Burt Rutan. Burt Rutan is one of the genius minds of aviation. He has built 20 different designs for airplanes, including one that went up into outer space. Now, the Long Easy is a great airplane. It is probably a better design than a Cessna or a Piper. The problem is you gotta build it or you gotta buy it from somebody that built it. Now, your first red flag is this an experimental airplane. The second red flag is you gotta build it. The third red flag, or you gotta buy one that's already been built. So, if you can buy one, you can get these planes for $50,000. If you can buy one that's been built by someone that knows what they're doing, it's a great airplane. It's a sought out airplane. The speed, I think it'll go 2,000 miles, depending upon the variant. There's people that have bought these airplanes, and there's all kinds of variants. They've put different engines, different fuel tanks, all kinds of stuff on these airplanes. That airplane is a great design, but you have to buy it from someone that knows what they're doing when they built it. It has to be built perfect. If it's built perfect, that plane is crash proof. It's crash proof, but you gotta have the maintenance done on it. It has to be built perfectly by somebody who knows what they're doing, and you gotta have some training in it. These people here we go back to these retired airline pilots and commercial pilots, and they got 20,000, 10,000 hours, and they jump in this little airplane and try to fly it without training, and they kill themselves. You gotta find a mechanic that knows about that airplane, that can fix the little stuff on it and do the proper maintenance. And you gotta find a pilot that can train you. You probably need a good 10 hours of training, and you probably need 20 hours of classroom time to learn about the plane. That plane, the one he was in, it's got two 25-gallon tanks. It's got 2,000 mile range. It'll hold two people. It'll go 140 knots to 180 knots, burning 5 gallons an hour, depending upon the engine and how it's set up. Like I said, there's numerous variants of that plane. That is a great plane, and it's a great design. But you have to have the proper training and the proper maintenance. Now, let's get back to Mr. Denver. Mr. Denver, John Denver was a genius. He was a songwriter, singer. He was a genius. His dad was actually a test pilot, and John Denver got his pilot license when he was 16 years old. There's a video of him and his dad flying a Learjet, and John Denver's in the left seat. Now, I don't know if he's typed. I think maybe he was in the left seat. His dad, because he was a genius, was probably typed in the airplane, but they're flying this Learjet. John Denver was big on aviation. He was big on the environment and stuff like that. He was a great guy, but when he crashed that plane, I think he had only had that plane for a week or two. His license was suspended for DUIs. When you go to get your medical, I got a first-class medical. Every 6 months, I go to the doctor. I get my eyes checked. I get my ears checked. Every year, I get an EKG. They check everything. You have to pee in a cup. And when you pee in the cup, they check for all kinds of stuff. If I'm driving down the road in my car and I got my window down and I pull up to some people smoking weed, I got to roll the window up because I can't inhale it. Because when I go get my medical, they're gonna see that in my blood. I have to be very careful where I go, what I do. And if you have any DUIs, you have to submit that to the FAA. And the FAA will suspend your license. He had 2 DUIs. His license was suspended. And it's no secret, John Denver smoked a lot of weed and he did LSD over the span of his life. You could tell by listening and talking, not that I ever talked to him, but the interviews, that he was a little bit of a happy person. So doing marijuana all your life, smoking marijuana all your life, and doing LSD changes the capacity of your brain and your thinking processes and how you deal with life. And you do not need to be in an airplane if you've been smoking weed and doing LSD for 30 years. I mean, you just don't need to be in an airplane. So his license was suspended. He had 2 DUIs. When you go to get your medical, they make you pee in a cup and they check for a lot of that. If you've had any DUIs, anything like that, all of the medicine you take, that has to be submitted on your application when you go to get your medical. The FAA is very strict on that. So he had a suspended license at the time of crash. I'm sorry, my sinuses, the Philippines, I can't get used to the weather. So he had a suspended license. He had only had that plane, I think, for a week or two. He wasn't really trained on it, although he's a great pilot. He had 2,700 hours, all kinds of experience. You can't jump in that little plane like that and just fly it if you don't understand how to fly it. Now, the day he was flying it, he had a discussion with his mechanic. His mechanic told him, look, you need to fill this plane up with gas. He had 5 gallons in the left tank, which is about for 1 hour. And he had more gas in the right tank, but he didn't fill the plane up with gas. Remember what I said? The number 1 killer of pilots under 200 hours, running out of gas. Number 2, flying from good weather into bad weather. So he jumped in the plane. He was doing touch and goes. Then he was flying over the ocean 500 foot above the water. Is that legal? Well, yeah. But he didn't like where the fuel gauge was. If you're flying a Piper or a Cessna 210, every 15 minutes, you got to change tanks. Now, I don't write it down and time it. 1 o'clock I change, 1:15 I change, 1:30 I change. I don't care if I took off at 10 minutes after, at 15 minutes after I change. I don't write it down, and every 15 minutes on the ticks I change. Same thing with the Cherokee. You got to change the gas every 15 minutes. That plane there, my understanding is you have to do the same thing. So he's flying over the ocean after doing touch and goes. When you do touch and goes, you're burning a lot more gas when you're taking off. When you're just doing this right here, you don't burn as much gas. He had 5 gallons in the left tank. They said he had more gas in the right tank, but he was doing touch and goes. Then he was flying over the ocean, 500 foot over the ocean, and he ran the tank dry. So he had the fuel gauge, the fuel selector valve, which was down in the middle, which is basically the same place on all airplanes. He had it moved back behind him. Now, the reason they did that, because they said, well, if you have to do a belly landing, it'll rupture the fuel tank. If you do a belly landing, it's going to rupture a lot of stuff. There's no reason to move that. You are not smarter than Burt Rutan. Trust me. Burt Rutan put it there. That plane is a genius design. So moving that selector to the back where you can't, it's hard to see it and reach it. If you run that tank dry and you're at 10,000 foot, you got time to fix that, to switch tanks and restart the engine. If you're 500 foot above the ground and you're going 120 miles an hour, you don't have a lot of time, especially if you have to reach back and turn that. The NTSB report said the fuel selector was on off. I don't think he had time to change it, because they're saying what he did is he turned around and changed it, and when he stretched, he put his foot on the right rudder and just went into the ocean, straight down. There were witnesses that said they saw the plane flying and it just went straight down to the ocean. At 500 foot over the ocean, going 120 miles an hour, you run your tank dry and your engine quits, you don't have a lot of time. Altitude is your friend. When you're 500 foot, that's just not a good situation. So that's what happened to him and his plane. His maintenance was a little funny. He didn't have a lot of training. He didn't have a lot of time in the plane. And he ran the tank dry. That's what happened to John Denver. So, you know, you got to do the maintenance. You got to have the training. There's nothing wrong with that airplane. That is a great airplane. It's a great design. But when you get in these little airplanes, you got to have training. And you got to find a mechanic that knows that airplane. I looked online. You can buy those planes for $50,000 all day long. Now, any experimental plane you see all over the internet, 40% done, 60% done, 80% done, because these people get frustrated. You got to build that plane from scratch. You got to buy the materials. You got to be a pretty smart guy. You got to be a fabricator, have mechanical ability to build that plane. It might take you 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years to build that plane. So what happens is people buy these kit planes and they spend a lot of time and money, and they get tired of their wife screaming at them about you spend so much time in the garage working on a plane you're never going to fly, and they just get frustrated and they sell it. So you can buy these planes cheaper, 20, 40, 60, 80% built. But if you buy one that's already built and you researched who built it and you take it to a professional who knows that plane and lets them check it out, has this plane been built professionally? Are the specs correct? That's a great airplane. You're only as good as your training and your maintenance. You can't move the fuel selector and you can't fly it with no gas in it. Let me tell you something. Airplanes will not fly without fuel. You gotta put fuel in them. Flying with 5 gallons in one tank and a little bit more in the other tank, and your mechanic saying, look, you need to fill the plane up with gas, and he jumped in it and flew it anyway. You can't do that. You gotta put gas in the airplane. You can't fly over the ocean 500 foot above the ocean. You can do it, and it's legal. What's smart is not always right, and what's right is not always smart, and what's legal is not always smart. I flew a guy, rich guy. Here's another rich guy story. Rich guy, filthy rich, bought a 182. Now, he could afford a nice, newer 182. I'm not talking, he could afford a brand new 182. Brand new 182 is $800,000. He could have bought a nice 182 for $250,000. But because he's so cheap, you couldn't get his greased BB up as you know what. He bought this old 182. I mean, it had a nice Aspen in it, a little autopilot and stuff, but it was an old 182. He wanted me to fly him to his house in Marathon, Florida, because he couldn't fly. So, okay, all right, we fly down there. He wanted to fly over the Florida Keys, 1,000 foot above the ocean. My other pilot did it. I ain't your other pilot. You could look down from 4,500 foot and see sailplanes and little planes crossing over the ocean. Oh, he said, it's okay. I said, what if the engine quits? We're going to be in the ocean. He says, oh, no, the water's only like a couple of feet deep. You can walk to Marathon. He really said that. He wasn't joking. I said, look, we are not flying over the ocean at 1,000 foot. We're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. So that's another rich person story. Now, he called me 6 months later and said, I sold the plane, and when we did the pre-buy, one of the cylinders wasn't even working. So he goes, Glenn, you made the right decision. Yeah, I made the right decision. I'm not flying. I'm not flying over the ocean at 1,000 foot over the Florida Keys. So anyway, you can't fly over the ocean 500 foot with no gas in your plane, in a plane that you haven't had proper training in. So the NTSB report on John Denver's crash said he ran out of gas. That's what he did. He ran out of gas. You can't do LSD. You can't smoke weed. You can't get DUIs and fly experimental airplanes with no gas in it. It's not going to work. Oh my God, that gives me a headache. I look at an airplane like it's a horse or a German Shepherd. I think more of a horse or a German Shepherd than I do people. I mean, horses and German Shepherds are nice. Kids between the age of 2 and 12 are nice. It's when they get older is when they get a little crazy. And I think of an airplane the same way. I hate to go to the airport and see airplanes that have been sitting there 20 years neglected. That hurts my heart because I love airplanes. But you've got to do the maintenance and you got to be trained on the airplane. And you can't fly an airplane. When they did Mr. Denver's toxicology report for the autopsy, he didn't have anything in his system. He didn't have any drugs or anything in his system. But when you do certain drugs, over a 20-year span, it clouds your memory and your brain is just not as good. You might be a happier person, but your brain cannot think as well and clearly. Now, not that I'm an expert on drugs. When I was young, you'd see people that did heroin. You'd see a 70-year-old heroin addict. You don't see a 70-year-old heroin addict these days. They don't make it to 30. Why? Because drugs today are 100 times more potent than they were 20, 30 years ago because they put all this fentanyl in everything. Not that I know that because I don't do drugs. Glenn doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He exercises every day. He eats healthy. The only drug I do is chocolate and Diet Coke. So, but you can't fly airplanes with a suspended license. And you have to have a clear mind. Right now, we're using 30% of our brain. When you get in an airplane, you're using 110% of your brain because you are literally faced with death because you're flying through the air. You got to be thinking, concentrating. You're doing mental calculations. You're doing things in the air that you can't remember on the ground. Right now, if you ask me how to do this in a citation jet, I probably couldn't remember it. But when you're in the air, you have the capacity in your brain to use 100% of it. But you got to either learn how to do that, but when you get up in an airplane, your brain kicks in automatically and you can do that. But if you've had a lifetime of doing drugs, you take away part of that power in your brain. So John Denver ran out of gas 500 foot above the ocean. That's what happened to him. It's tragic. It's terrible. A nice man gone, a genius, great singer, great songwriter, and a nice airplane gone. That's what happened to John Denver. Training and maintenance. And I'm talking training every 6 months. I'm not talking about getting that plane and getting trained one time. I'm talking every 6 months. You can have a professional that knows that plane, that will come to you, to your city. You got to pay his hotel and you got to pay him every day. It's money well spent. He will sit down with you for 3 hours every day and do class. Then he will go get in the airplane and he will fly with you. Stalls, steep turns, engine out procedures. He'll go over all of that with you. So when those things happen, boom, you automatically know what to do. Training and maintenance. Any airplane you buy. I wouldn't get in an experimental airplane. That plane, I wouldn't get in that plane because that's just me. I'm not getting in that airplane. Was that a good airplane? Yes. That airplane is better than a 172 or a Cherokee 180. That's a great airplane, but you got to do the training and you got to do the maintenance. You got to buy one and have it checked out by an expert mechanic that works on that plane all the time. And you got to do the training. Every 6 months, you got to take a week and have someone come there and train you in that airplane. And it would be a great airplane. So, stay away from experimental airplanes. Don't buy experimental kit planes that people say 60% done, 80% done. Don't even buy them. Don't even look at it. You can go get you a good used 172 for $100,000. And you're going to live a long time. They made more 172s than any other plane ever. Now I'm going to get emails. Oh, I made that. This is the greatest airplane ever. 172, 182. I would really get a 182 before 172. Everybody can work on it. There's parts everywhere. Any place you land, the mechanic. It's like a Silverado pickup truck. Everybody has parts. Everybody can work on it. When you start dealing in these home bills and something breaks, you're stuck at the airport. You're going to be getting an airliner home, and you're going to be waiting 2 or 3 weeks to find a mechanic to come look at it, and another 2 weeks to get the parts. There are a gazillion parts for a 172, 182. The same aileron, the same rudder will fit on a 1975, will fit on a 2025. The reason for that is because you have an abundance of parts and abundance of people working on it. Okay, I'm going to stop the rant. You can't fly over the ocean at 500 foot at 120, 30, 40 miles an hour with no gas in the airplane. It's not going to work.